The year is 2002. It's Saturday. Your friend Nick, who just got a new Xbox, has invited you and two homies to come over and play Halo. And guess what? Your mom said that you can have a sleepover. Doritos, Mountain Dew, rocket launchers only on Blood Gulch. If the sun isn't rising when you guys finally pass out, then you didn't do it right. Back in the day, this was pretty much the only way to play multiplayer games on console. Getting together in person and playing for hours on end in your friend's living room. But as the internet came into its own, the local multiplayer experience started to wane. Once the online era started moving forward, there was no looking back, and many developers stopped including split screen and co-op modes altogether. But not all games have followed suit. Even in recent years, some developers have bucked the trend and decided to focus on a local first experience. Think Cuphead, Little Big Planet, and fighting games. They may not all be local exclusive, but online play certainly isn't the primary intention. Enter Parsec, a gaming service that allows users to stream games from their computer to whatever they have at their disposal. iPhone, Android, tablet, PC, Parsec is a program that allows you to play your games anywhere and with other people. So rather than going over to your friend Nick's house, who at this point is probably married with kids, you can just boot up Parsec, pick a game, and drink that 2-liter of Mountain Dew from the comforts of your own home. So you're probably wondering, who exactly uses this service? Outside of those who want to play co-op games or continue their Hades run while on the bus, what implications does Parsec have for competitive gaming? And the answer is found in those who, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, are unable to travel to tournaments, the fighting game community. Unlike most big esports communities that can host qualifying events or even entire leagues online, the FGC hosts all of its major events in person. The main reason for this is that fighting games are typically much more sensitive to precision and split-second reaction times, and any disruption to the flow of the match can be devastating. So, rather than risk online events that might have lag, LAN events are the community's lifeblood. While some communities have been able to move online, like Skullgirls and even Tekken 7, which updated its netcode in the recent Season 4 patch, other titles, especially bigger ones, have been struggling. Games like Street Fighter V and Dragon Ball FighterZ have notoriously bad netcode, and moving tournaments online isn't really an option since the online play is too inconsistent. So, what are some of the options? Well, in the case of Street Fighter V, players took matters into their own hands, and Redditor UUltimore built a mod that fixed the base game's asymmetrical netcode. Basically, the issue with Street Fighter V is that if one player had a bad connection, the player with the good connection was punished for it, as that player's game would constantly have to roll back to compensate for the other player's poor connection. This mod basically got rid of that, and made sure that both players had smoother gameplay, at least on PC. Seeing the improvement, Capcom decided that a mod like this was simply unacceptable, so they decided to fix the game's netcode themselves. Street Fighter V is a great example of a community coming together and pressuring a company into building a better experience for their player base. Except for one thing. Capcom didn't actually fix the netcode. What they did do was update the game, claiming to have fixed the problem, and then locked players out who had the mod on their computers, forcing them to uninstall it, and by the time people finally got back into the game, they found that the netcode was still terrible. In other words, Capcom addressed the fact that modders had built better netcode than they could. They actively went out of their way to say that they would fix online play as long as people uninstalled the original mod, and then did nothing except prevent players from fixing a problem they had already fixed. Yikes. But there are other games that have sought to shift online in spite of developer inaction, and we need look no further for evidence than Smash Melee. The community that reverse engineered a 19-year-old game, emulated it, built their own netcode from the ground up, and created an online experience that is, quite simply, one of the best in all of fighting games right now. Playing a GameCube title from across the world on virtually no lag is quite the feat. But unfortunately, not every community is in a place where they can reverse engineer an entire game just to implement better netcode. For example, Killer Instinct has great online play, but it took the team 2 years to get it running properly. This is where Parsec comes in. Other than letting players stream games from their own devices, Parsec also offers access to virtual machines, which are top-of-the-line computers that are hooked up to absolutely juiced internet connections. So even if your computer or tablet or phone isn't very good, that doesn't matter, since you're streaming from a machine that has the best hardware money can buy. Apart from being able to play the game at the highest settings, the VM also acts as a neutral connection point between two or more players. Since the game is being hosted remotely, neither player gets the advantage of being host, leveling the playing field and allowing players to compete against each other from farther away. Take this image for example. By connecting to a VM in Iowa, players from California and Florida are able to play against each other on very similar delays. Alternatively, if one of these players was acting as the host, the ping would be much higher. So what does this mean for esports scenes, and how can Parsec be used to host tournaments? Let's look at two games in the FGC. The first is Marvel vs. Capcom 3, a game that came out in 2011, no longer has developer support, and is only actively maintained by the community. The other is Dragon Ball FighterZ, a sort of spiritual successor to Marvel, and one of the most popular fighting games out right now. The only issue with it is that it has a reputation for its poor online experience. Let's start with MVC3. When it first released, Marvel was met with high acclaim, mostly living up to the expectations set by its predecessors and becoming the de facto team fighter in the FGC. However, MVC3 had one major shortcoming, and that was its online play. Utilizing delay-based netcode, which artificially adds extra delay to compensate for lag, online modes were choppy, prone to dropped inputs, and would often desync altogether. For a fighting game, this was simply unacceptable, and on top of being frustrating, lag can compromise the integrity of matches. Even with the release of the game's definitive edition, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, online play remained pretty bad. So the community said, okay, we know Capcom isn't going to fix their netcode, so we're not even going to try. So, LAN events were where the tournament scene lived, and Marvel was pretty much only played competitively at in-person events. Unfortunately, since the game is no longer as popular as it once was, on top of pretty much everyone still being in lockdown, playing the game live with friends is not really an option. You can probably see where we're going with this. Through Parsec, tournament organizers like Kevin Ha have been able to host weekly events and keep the scene alive despite a host of challenges preventing in-person competition. He's been running weekly events that connect players from across North America, and the competitive scene has seen quite a resurgence, all things considered. Here's a comparison between traditional netplay, Steam Cloud, and Parsec, which should give you an idea of how much smoother the gameplay can be. No stuttering, no freezing, just good, solid gameplay. But the buck doesn't stop at UMVC3. Other, more modern titles have a similar story. Let's take Dragon Ball FighterZ for example. Unlike Marvel, DBFZ is a really active game with an online mode that people actually play on. Unfortunately, the DBFZ online experience is such that players would sometimes rather quit the game altogether than suffer playing online for one more match. The experience is just completely different from offline, and any matches you get online are typically of such poor quality that they don't really prepare you at all for a tournament setting. But when given the opportunity to play on a platform like Parsec, players like Sonic Fox said playing from East Coast to West Coast was comparable to playing offline, and top players like Hook Gang God said that Parsec is almost like a tournament experience. And while it's not perfect, it is definitely superior to any other online alternatives. Thus far, the consensus seems to be that Parsec allows the smoothest gameplay short of actually being there in person. While it hasn't caught on with everyone, the technology is definitely at the point where we might see legitimate fighting game tournaments operating on the platform. TNF has run events through Parsec, and the hope is that the FGC may find a temporary home online until in-person events are able to happen again. So now, even though you're in lockdown, you and your buddy Nick can get that Mountain Dew 2 a.m. in the basement experience without actually having to be there in person. What do you think of third-party online platforms? Is there a place to host tournaments through something like Parsec? Or is it better to just wait until in-person competitions are back? Because hey, nothing compares to being there in real life. We look forward to seeing your comments below. My name's Jonah. See you next time. This video is made possible thanks to our wonderful patrons. Massive thank you to everyone on this list, and shout out to Jason, Foxy, Lyra, Mauve, Nate, Nathan, Sierra, Shoopy, Shampoo, Weeaboo, and Spartacus for being Platinum supporters, as well as an extra special shout out to Mookie, Noodles, Marco, and Steven for being Diamond supporters. Thank you, I love you, we appreciate it. If you also want to support the channel and unlock perks, check out the Patreon link in the description below or join our Discord server. If you want to help us out in a different way, leaving a like, subscribing, and hitting the bell to stay up to date is also appreciated. My name is Jonah, thanks for watching.